Anyway, I'm gonna try and not get distracted by Pippin down here, but he's very distracting. Yes, you are. Oh, you're so cute. Oh dear. Hi everybody, it's Jade and Pippin, who seems absolutely determined that he's going to be in this video. So, but I'm going to spend the next, 15 to 20 minutes telling you about the books that I read last month. In the month of August, I read 10 books, which is, a lot better going than I thought it would be. We seem to be staying in the double digits. And he's out. He's gone. Okay, cool. 3 of those books were audiobooks, so we will start with those. I don't know if this is going to be the way I do all of my wrap-ups, starting with audiobooks, but this is how we're going to do it now. The first audiobook I listened to was Wonder vs. Lying by Karen M. McManus. I gave this a 4-star. This was a really good, mystery book. I really liked the take on, the Breakfast Club but somebody dies, which is, is the premise of this book. It starts with 5 kids, all in detention. One of them dies. So the other 4 are all suspects. Initially I was really confused as to how this would work, because it's written from all 4 of the kids' perspectives. You get different chapters per character, and sort of the whole concept is that each of them has something to hide, and basically all the way through the book I was like, is it you? Is it you? There were certain characters that I was like, please don't let it be you. To the point where actually there were no characters in this that I desperately wanted to be the killer. Which, I mean, I think is the point, is I sympathised with all of them and was like, I really hope somehow that you are not the killer. So yes, highly recommend that. 4-star read. Let's try and get the full title without messing up. The second audiobook I read was On Chapel Sands, The Mystery of My Mother's Disappearance as a Child by Laura Cumming. This audiobook was also read by Laura Cumming, and she has a very soothing voice. I gave this a 3-star, mostly because it wasn't actually what I thought it was when I went in. I thought I was going to be reading a true crime kind of thing, but the mother's disappearance, this is a non-fiction, for those of you who don't know, it's a memoir. The mother's disappearance actually took a bit of a back seat, and the whole thing was more of a delve into Laura Cumming's family tree and just the domestic situation around her mother that was almost just kicked off with this disappearance. So, as a 3-year-old child, her mother was kidnapped for 3 days, I think, and then miraculously reappeared again, which is what kicked off Laura Cumming looking into her mother's past and the story of her family and Chapel Sands. So most of the book is just about Chapel Sands and her family and her family tree, mixed in with a lot of talk about art, because Laura Cumming is a art critic and her mother was an artist, and so was her father. So in that case I found it really interesting, because she obviously knows a lot about art, and there was lots of nice descriptions, and it was very, very descriptive. For a non-fiction book, it was quite flowery, but it wasn't what I went in thinking it was going to be, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. The final audiobook I listened to was Clock Dance by Anna Tyler. I gave this a 1-star. It's the only 1-star on this list. This month was a lot more mixed in terms of ratings than last month, which was mostly a 4 and 5-star month. Yeah, I didn't actually finish this. This was a DNF, because I was 4 or 5 hours in, realised I still had 2 hours left to go, and I was like, no. It was such a boring story, and the main character was such a doormat, and I didn't find any personal growth or character development in her story. I was waiting for the point where she would grow a fucking backbone, and it never happened. The only defining feature she had, other than her ability to let everyone she has ever met walk all over her, is the fact that she is sexist, she is fatphobic, she's a little bit racist as well, and I was like, I don't like you. I don't like being in your head. This story is not compelling. I'm so bored, and I have other things to do with my life. So yes, I DNF this, and it was not good. I also borrowed 3 books from the library, which I read before my TBR because I had more of a deadline, and I don't know why when I'd given myself like a 6-book TBR that I went, you know what, let's just go and get some books from the library as well. Why not? But yeah. So the first book I physically read, that obviously I can't show you because it's back at the library now, was My Sister the Serial Killer by Ian Braithwaite. You know how terrible I am with names. I gave this one a 2-star, which made me really sad because I had been looking forward to this, which is why I picked it up. It just... the whole concept of just the plot of this woman who knows her sister is a serial killer and she kind of helps her clean up the bodies was so interesting, but the character dynamics were so unbelievable that I was just frustrated through a lot of it, and then the story kind of didn't really go anywhere. It was an interesting concept. The main character's sister keeps killing her boyfriends, and initially she was saying it was self-defense, but now her sister's getting wise to it and being like, surely they can't all be self-defense, and you seem to be a bit too nonchalant about the fact that you're like killing these people. And then it just never like realised its potential, I don't think. On the other end of the scale, I read another like memoir non-fiction called 1 Million Minutes, What My Daughter Taught Me About Time by Wolf Cooper. It's a U with a little umlaut on top of it, so I don't know how to pronounce that. This was a 5-star. It's gonna sound cliche because this is almost a little bit of a self-help book, but it's one of those books that makes you look at your world differently. Basically, Wolf Cooper has a daughter who has developmental needs. He never fully... I think he did name the condition she has, but I can't remember it off the top of my head. But it basically means that everything she does is a lot slower than other people. Not necessarily mean her brain works slower. Her brain works quite fast from what I could see, just in a very different way. But then again, she's also a little child, so she's just very imaginative. But her like motor functions aren't great, so when they like have to go for a walk, they have to go quite slowly because she would like trip over herself, and she doesn't have like fine motor skills with her like hands and things like that. So at one point, she says to him, "Oh, imagine what we could do with 1 million minutes of just like the great things." Instead of, work and chores and things. If we just had 1 million minutes of adventure, wouldn't that be so good? And Wolf took this to heart and took a 2-year sabbatical from his work, which very unrealistic for most people, but he does also explain that they are not a well-off family. The way they managed to finance their 1 million minutes is by like selling most of their stuff, and they had a couple of loans that they were going to use for house renovations that they used to travel instead. And it's basically him and his travels with his family and learning to just enjoy life a bit more. And because we have a finite number of minutes in this world, so he decided, yes, I'm going to use 1 million of those just to enjoy my family and see the world and travel and things. And it just puts into perspective all of the little unimportant things that you spend so much of your time just like focusing on and panicking about, and why am I spending this money that could translate to like literal minutes if you use it for travelling instead? Why am I using all of this money to buy like a brand new TV or a brand spanking new sofa when what I currently have is fine and I don't need it like a new thing? So I mean, I don't know how much, you know, of that it actually sinks into my bones, but whilst I was reading it, it was like, you know, epiphanies. The last library book I read was Exit West by Mohsin Hamid. I gave this a 4-star. It was really good. It was not what I thought it was going into it. I'd heard the name Exit West, but I think I'd gotten it confused with like a thriller with a similar name. And this was so much better than what I think I'd gone in thinking about it was going to be. Basically, Exit West is set in a unnamed country that seems like it's in the Middle East, and it is on the brink of war. And just as it's on the brink of war, these two characters meet and they fall in love. Literally, like, just as war happens and suddenly curfews are introduced and women aren't allowed to go, like, outside unless they're, like, fully covered now, and unmarried couples can't be seen with each other. But at the same time as this war is happening, these doors are opening around the city and around the world that lead just completely new places, as in still on planet Earth, but you could go through a door in this country and appear in America or England. And the story follows this like brand new couple as they escape this war-torn country and both realise like how much they need each other, but also that their relationship is incredibly new and some of the obligations that they feel for each other because they've just left everything behind apart from each other. So how do they reconcile whether they actually love each other or whether they're just reliant on each other? And yes, it was very well written, and it was an actually believable relationship between these two characters amongst this sort of fantastical idea of these doors that lead to other worlds, whilst he also made sure to focus on like the repercussions of what would happen if literally borders were not a thing anymore, because how can you say a country is a country when you could go into someone's house and then suddenly you're like literally on the other side of the world, and you can't like police that, you can't document that. So it was a good allegory for immigration as well, and how certain people react to people from another place coming into what they consider their land. So yes, that I highly recommend that one. And now on to the books that were actually on my TBR. The first one I read was Milkweed by Jerry Spinelli. I can't physically show you this because I unhauled it. Which I did explain in my unhaul video. I gave this a 2-star. I've read this book before, not that specific book, but I've read this story before. It's a child's perspective during the Second World War. And I've read that in The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas and like The Diary of Anne Frank and things like that, and this one just didn't do it as well as other books have done it. And the writing was just very juvenile, really. The story was compelling in a way because reading about, so even though this is a fictional retelling, reading about events that you know happened always interests me. So reading about a child in the Warsaw ghettos, like right on the cusp of the Holocaust happening, was very interesting, and yet the way it was told wasn't. The next book I read was The Lost Man by Jane Harper. This was a 4-star, or maybe closer to like a 4.5 star. I'm definitely going to read this again because I don't tend to read thrillers twice, but I want to read this one again already. And I mean, it's Jane Harper. This is only the second book of hers that I've read, but already like she is a fast fave. This is a story of 3 brothers in the Australian outback, and one of them seemingly randomly leaves his fully air-conditioned, fully stocked car and walks for 9 miles to a grave of an unknown Stockman. Is that the word? Yeah, Stockman. And curls up and dies. And the whole thing is unraveling. Why did he do that? Did he commit suicide? Is there something else that we don't know? This is definitely like a domestic thriller. And the twists and the turns, some of which I saw coming, I was like, maybe this is a thing, and then it did like become a thing, and I like it when I can sort of guess some of the twists and thrillers, but I also like it when I don't guess all of them, because there were certain things in this that I was reading and I went, oh, okay. So, yeah. Jane Harper writes relationships, and especially family relationships, very well, and that was showcased really well in this one. The next book, sorry, let's settle myself again. The next book I read was the book club choice for this month, and that was Beauty Queens by Liba Bray. As I said before, I read this years and years ago, and I think I definitely enjoyed it more the first time round because I was in the right age range for this. I still enjoyed it. It was a 3-star. It's just that some of the social commentary in this book is quite ham-fisted, which works for the age group that it is aimed at, but when you are in your late 20s, as I am, it's a bit over the top. Beauty Queens is about a group of beauty queens on their way to a pageant, and suddenly their plane crashes on a desert island. So it's, the way I describe it to most people is it's Lord of the Flies but with beauty queens, except it's really not, and I'd forgotten how much it isn't. Like, that is just the setup. The rest of it, there's one point where it just goes completely off the rails, which I loved. It's definitely, if this was like a movie, I'd say it's definitely like a popcorn movie. This is a book that it does have a bit of a deeper meaning, but the deeper meaning is also incredibly surface level, and you know that a lot of it is a critique of the beauty industry and the way women are controlled by corporations and the media, and how everyone is controlled by corporations and the media. Like, the big bad in this is called the corporation, but it's still written in a very funny way, and I still really enjoyed it. I've taken all the tabs out of it now, but it was very heavily tabbed up at one point with just like really quite funny lines. And all of the characters in this are just, as in all of the beauty queen characters, are just really lovable. You've got the girl that entered the beauty pageant in an attempt to show how stupid beauty pageants are. And yet you also have the girl that has been basically raised in beauty pageants, and she is kind of that typical bubbly airhead type character who is really quite dumb, but she's a bimbo, really, but doesn't have like a nasty bone in her body. She's like the loveliest character, and even though she is a bit dumb, you're just there like, I still love you. And you just got so many mix of characters, and each girl is a different person. They're all nice and well-rounded. So even though I only give it 3 stars, I'd still recommend this, but it's definitely a young adult, new adult type book. But, I've got to get up again. If I thought this through, I'd, actually get the books before I started the video, but... And the last book I actually managed to finish last month was a pleasant surprise, and that was Starters by Lisa Price. This is a book that has been on my shelf for at least 7 years. It went to uni with me every year, and I never read it because I just didn't read books in uni. It was a sad, sad point in my life where I didn't read. And it got to the point where I was terrified of reading it because I'd had it for so long. And I wish I hadn't waited as long. I gave this a 4 stars. I probably should have known that I'd enjoy it because, as I've said before, I really like young adult dystopian, even though it got incredibly oversaturated and there is a lot of guff out there. This is not one of them. This was really nice and refreshing. The plot of this is that in the near future, a massive pandemic has wiped out everyone between the ages of, I think it was 19 and 60. Because all of the vulnerable got vaccinated before this pandemic hit. So the older people and the younger people all got vaccinated. And there wasn't enough time to vaccinate everyone in between. So now you have a society of starters, who are young people, and enders, who are older people. Also, in this universe, it is now, medicine has advanced so much that people are routinely living to like 200 years old. In this world, a new company called Prime Destinations has started up, which, through the miracles of technology, will allow an ender to rent a starter's body for a limited period of time, and they can live as a young person for that limited period of time. And it follows the story of Callie, who rents herself out as a host for an ender. But something goes wrong, and she wakes up midway through her rental period and finds out that whoever has rented her for not great purposes, and it's unravelling this mystery, and things in Prime Destinations aren't all that they seem. And I didn't realise this is a two-parter, but I bought the second book halfway through this one because I was like, I need to know how this finishes. I can't just read this and then not read the next one. So, yes, as soon as Enders arrives, which is the second one in the series, I will be reading that. I'm gonna sneeze. Wow! Whoa. Okay, and on that note, yes, that's all I read for the month of August. Have you guys read any of the books that were on my list? Do you agree with what I said? Do you disagree? Did I, slam one of your favourite books? Did you hate one of the books that I really enjoyed? Let me know in the comments. And I will see you in the next video. Bye!